Finlos here. Just wanted to take a minute to apologize for the quality of the audio in this episode. The audio for these are always going to be a little bit funky as I'm recording myself while I exercise, but in this one, it's extra rough because about halfway through, the rowing machine broke and I had to switch over to an elliptical machine, which creaks and squeaks. So not the best audio quality, but I was really dedicated to getting it done, to showing that life can surprise us and we just got to adapt and keep on rowing. So please bear with me. I really appreciate your patience and thanks for joining me. Hey, this is Finlos. Today is April 6, 2025, and this is Rowing with the Homies, where we are trying to explore the intersection of physical and mental well-being. I really appreciate you being here with me today. My hope is that I want to look at how staying active and maintaining a healthy exercise routine can hopefully empower us to feel good in our bodies and engage thoughtfully with the world around us. It's my intent to create a space where we can discuss what I think are important topics, from current events to big ideas, and then look at how that connects to the complexities of mental health. And of course, all the while emphasizing the importance of taking care of ourselves in general. To start off today, I'm going to talk about the recent hands-off protests and what they tell us about the value and limitations of political action in the pursuit of personal political agency. From there, we'll explore the role of community in trying to navigate feelings of powerlessness. And we'll close out with a discussion of how conditions like depression can exacerbate feelings of loneliness and isolation, and what we can do to try to support ourselves and each other. Hopefully it'll be a journey that connects the external world to internal experiences, highlighting the importance of both individual resilience and collective action. Again, I really appreciate you being here with me as we row through these important topics together. To begin, the recent hands-off protests have been on my mind, and I found myself considering the value and limitations in the fight for agency, in the struggle for collective change. And I find it interesting because as we are still in the relatively early part of this current presidential administration, a similar protest took place the first time President Trump was elected. And that was what became known as like the Women's Marches, or the Women's March. And I remember Eva and we took our kids, our two daughters, out to participate in what we felt was a really important moment of recognizing the profound sense of disgust and outrage at the rhetoric and the actions and the personal history of the man at the top of the new administration. At the time, it was a visceral reaction to policies and actions and statements that both he and those in his administration had made. And it was a recognition that those actions and policies and statements were direct threats to the rights and well-being of so many women and minorities and other marginalized groups. And as we gathered, I remember just the excitement and, I guess, power that I felt as all of these individuals coalesced into a single moving body. It's amazing to see how shared outrage can galvanize hundreds, thousands of people to stand up and demand change. You know, it was a very almost intoxicating sense of solidarity. And it really left a lasting impact on me, especially as we moved through those 4 years. And so as I reflect on that experience, it's hard to deny the energy and power that comes when people gather together. So looking at what just happened this past weekend, these hands-off protests happened across the country as large-scale demonstrations, once again, against the policies and actions of the Trump administration. And in a way, it feels almost like an echo. While the women's marches may have been sort of had a specific idea of the threat to women's rights at its core, these new marches, the hands-off marches, have a much broader range of issues, as this current administration really is working to, on a daily basis, destabilize already weak and, at times, ineffective protections against marginalized communities. But a key focus is to oppose actions specifically targeting government downsizing, and in particular, the role of Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Other concerns are about policies affecting the economy and these tariffs, human rights, including the recognition of LGBTQ communities and trans rights, immigration, healthcare, and again, protections for marginalized communities. It is true that even compared to those women's marches, these have been significantly larger in scale, with demonstrations taking place in all 50 states, including the National Mall in Washington, D.C., state capitals, with early estimates placing numbers in the hundreds of thousands. But as I consider these protests, I do want to think about this type of community organizing, this type of action, and the value or the impact that they have. I think that protests do shine a spotlight on issues that might otherwise be ignored, forcing them into more public conversations. I think that they are a way of creating a sense of, or demonstrating solidarity, that these are not just the voices of a person here or a person there, but huge groups, huge portions of the population are represented by those who are protesting. They exert pressure on those who have power, if not through direct policy action, then definitely through the power of optics. But there are some obvious limitations to protests. They often function more as a starting point or as a means of gathering. rather than a single magic solution that's gonna transform or cause change in an immediate sense. What's the real challenge is finding ways to translate the energy that is coalesced in these gatherings into concrete specific policies. And in that way, it's really the follow-up actions that come that where a lot of the work is done, including lobbying, voting, community organizing, spreading the word, keeping the conversations going, utilizing the tools that are available to us to reinforce the sense of solidarity. Because it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problems that we are trying to affect or to improve, to change. And of course, there are risks involved with protests. There's danger sometimes. And as we are seeing now with individuals being detained and deported, arrested, there is a true risk involved with these kind of gatherings. And it's important for those of us with privilege and power to use it as we gather to protect those who are more vulnerable. And also, there is a real, to use the cliche, double-edged sword risk to protest, and that the disruption is part of the purpose. Blocking traffic, causing a ruckus, interrupting services. These are all means of getting attention and beginning the process of enacting change. But how it is covered and how it is presented and who are the faces and voices of these organizations and gatherings can sometimes affect negatively how these protests and gatherings are perceived. And to zoom out a little bit, between the women's marches and these hands-off marches, there were also the protests in the summer of 2020 that were a response to the murder of George Floyd and the other acts of police brutality. And those protests that were focused on racial injustice have a similar goal in destabilizing levers of power that are unjust. And while all of these movements demonstrate the power of collective action and solidarity, they all serve to bring together diverse groups of people, highlighting the potential for broad coalitions to challenge the power structures. All of these instances have limitations. Those 2020 protests, despite their size and despite their longevity, in the end, did not result in sweeping policy or police reform. And so, it is important to remember that it is ongoing, sustained energy in the face of continuous resistance that ultimately yields any sort of progress. And as such, protest is a tool, one of many tools. But unfortunately, a lot of people use protest as a means of self-gratification or even socializing with good intent, but without a plan for follow-up action. And so even I right now, as I did not participate in these hands-off protests, I feel a degree of maybe not guilt, maybe not shame, maybe regret. But I do believe that my own ideas are evolving, and the means by which I take action are evolving similarly, and that I see the value of the protest, but I understand that my power might be best used in different ways, by different means. And I think that's a conversation that we all need to be having with ourselves and with our communities. And I think that last idea, community, really brings me to the idea of connection, and how protests often have a more immediate role in that they create or meet the need for connection as individuals search for their agency and their confirmation that they're not just passive victims of circumstance. We yearn for connection. We yearn for community. And that gets me thinking about the value and the need of community in the face of powerlessness. In a lot of ways, I think that's where protest begins. These protests, all the protests that I've mentioned, I think all protests in general are at their core a search for community, finding strength in numbers, a shared sense of purpose. And so, I think that the community or bonds that are created in protests, they can serve as a catalyst, which may in turn spark the formation of new groups, new organizations, new networks that continue to work for change long after the protests and demonstrations themselves have ended. People who meet in this way might go on to form local action groups, or engage in voter registration drives, or advocate for policy changes at the grassroots level. The relationships formed during these events provide individuals with a support system, a sense of accountability, and maybe even a shared commitment that helps to sustain the work. Maybe even most importantly, community plays a crucial role in providing emotional support and helping to foster resilience in the face of adversity. Within a community, individuals can find a network of people who understand and share ideas, have common experiences. And this validation can be incredibly powerful, especially when dealing with difficult or traumatic situations. Knowing that there are others who have faced similar challenges and have found ways to cope with them, to convert that challenge into action, can help to create a sense of hope and reduce feelings of isolation. Community members can offer a shoulder to cry on, an ear for listening, a source of encouragement, and help individuals process and navigate challenging times. Okay, so full transparency, the rowing machine has encountered a technical difficulty, so the remainder of this show will be on an elliptical machine. So rowing with the homies is not currently apt, but this is real life and we do the best that we can. And so I'm going to try to pick up where I was. I think the heart of what I'm trying to communicate, or maybe at the heart of what I feel, is that a strong community can provide individuals with a sense of shared identity and purpose. When people feel connected to something that is bigger than they are as an individual, they are more likely to find meaning and maybe even motivation in their lives. And honestly, belonging can be a powerful source of strength, helping individuals to continue to strive even through times of difficulty and work towards common goals. And I think that a lot of this, or maybe even all of this, is housed in a fundamental, basic need for connection with people. We're wired for belonging. Isolation is detrimental to our well-being. So many conversations right now are going on around the consequences of isolation and alienation, radicalization. Those are all consequences of a similar problem: loneliness, a lack of belonging, a lack of community. Community provides so much to our mental well-beings, to our sense of completeness, to our belief that we can, and so that we really do. There are so many benefits that come with belonging and with being a part of a community. I think it's something that is reinforced just by participation. We gain a sense of safety. We are able to reciprocate in care and safety and security and the benefits of existing in communities. Whereas, on the other hand, as I was stating before, the impacts of loneliness and isolation are obvious. And it's not just the maladaptive behaviors that I was talking about, but sometimes more subtle but equally profound consequences, including health decline, physiological ailments and diseases, depression, anxiety, shorter lifespan. And these realities underscore the critical importance of having social connections. And I think, to put it more clearly, maybe more simply, maybe more succinctly, sharing experience validates our emotions. Knowing others feel the same way, it makes us feel less crazy, less alone. Collective action transform individual helplessness into collective strength. That inner voice of, I can't do this alone, becomes, we can do this together. Community fosters hope. It reminds us that we're not fighting in a vacuum, that there are others who care and who are also working towards change. And so, to add some cheese to this conversation. It's a lot like rowing. Sometimes the feeling of an inability to do or accomplish anything can make us feel like we're rowing upstream against the current. And community can make us feel more like there's somebody else on the oars with us in the boat. But what happens when that feeling of isolation becomes overwhelming? What if loneliness in response, or that comes from a sense of isolation, is amplified by internal struggles? And so that's what I want to talk about in today's segment of Today Depression Feels Like. And I'm going to call it Shields Up. Today, depression feels like shields up. And again, to be clear, I live with dysthymia, which is not major depressive disorder, but they have a lot of things in common. My experience is mine and does not represent a common experience of others. But I do believe that these conversations about what our mental health feels like and looks like in our lived experiences can help to remediate some of these sensations of loneliness. So Shields Up is obviously, well, maybe not obvious, but it's a reference to certain sci-fi works, Star Trek and Star Wars more specifically, when the Enterprise or the Millennium Falcon engage in a space battle. They have these protective shields that they can put up around the hulls of the ships to protect them. And I think that as individuals, we do the same thing. Our shields are the form of distance and a refusal to share and a reluctance to allow others get close to us for fear of harm or because of the risk that comes with human interactions. And because of that, it makes connection incredibly difficult. And as those of us with dysthymia, depression, or other similar ways of existing in the world continue to exist, it's not just sadness. It's like a persistent sense of meh that takes place. And as that feeling persists, it makes the work of connecting with others much, much harder. It might show up as social anxiety, which is sort of what I was just describing, the sense of risk or danger that comes with interacting with people. It might present itself as fatigue, a physical manifestation of a mental lack of energy, which makes even the first step of getting up all the harder, all the more difficult. It could manifest as a lack of motivation because the risks are very high and the outcomes are uncertain. And it really contributes to that inner voice of somehow I'm just different from everyone, and different in a bad way, that no one can understand me, that I'm wrong, that I'm not worthy. And so I sometimes end up in a cycle of self-criticism, pessimism, and a sense of worthlessness. And so it's sort of a quandary that I find myself in, because connection is what I need to help break through this, but connection is often the hardest thing to do. I think that even this right now, as I'm heavy breathing and you hear the racket of this machine, and I'm finding myself incredibly self-conscious about it, I'm telling myself that I'm still going to share it, because maybe somebody can benefit from knowing that there's another voice. And it's a small step, but this conversation, and the conversation with my partner and with my children, and then with those community members with whom I feel safe and closest, just continuing those conversations can help to build my own stamina and resilience, and hopefully allow the process of making connections easier, little by little. And I'm not an expert, so if these are feelings that you're feeling, do please find someone who can help you. Call someone, reach out to those around you, and try to build that connection. There are resources available. And thank you for listening to this derailed but still ongoing episode of Rowing with the Homies. This is only episode number 2, and hopefully I can get the issues with my rowing machine fixed before the next episode. There are always setbacks in all things, and we have to find ways to move through them. But I hope this episode has provided some connection for you, and I'm really grateful for you joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's topics. You can reach out to me with any feedback or suggestions for future episodes. Find me on social media or email me finloslives.com. If you found this episode interesting or helpful, please subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. And if you know somebody who might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. Let's keep the conversation going and continue to support each other and build a community together.